Hello, everyone. This is Linda Taylor from CASAS. I'm the Director of Assessment Development and want to welcome you to the CASAS News and Updates monthly webinar today, June 18th, 2019. I hope you can see my screen with the PowerPoint. It's great. We have people from all over the country participating today. And we are recording the session, and we'll be posting it with the PowerPoint on our website shortly. All right, so I'm going to just start. Here's what we're going to cover today, and I'm going to highlight some of the things that are new. I'm imagining that some of you have not attended one of these webinars in the last 6 months or so, or any of the other sessions we've been doing around the country. So I'm going to go over some of the latest information about the new goals series, and then give you some additional information. We just had a great summer institute. We had 1,200 people there, and if you didn't go this year, hopefully you can make it next year. It'll be in Orange County, California. All right, so here's the basic overview of the CASAS system, so showing the 4 components, including accountability. And just to mention that I think this is hopefully familiar to those of you who are on the call, but in case you're not aware, the eTests can now be delivered on both Chromebooks and iPads, as well as paper, of course. And touchscreen capability is there for all the devices, including computers. So hopefully that will expand the options for you if you're considering transitioning to eTests. And if you are and have questions, of course, give us a call. So in terms of our NRS-approved assessments for ABE, our Reading Goals series is approved through 2025, and the Math Goals series is approved through 2022. These are the only 2 tests that you can use for ABE starting July 1, so please make sure and do all your post-testing of any continuing students by the end of June, so that you'll start using the Goals series in July. For ESL, like all of the other NRS-approved tests, the BEST Plus, the BEST Literacy, and the TABE Class E, the CASAS tests for ESL are approved through February of 2021. It's almost certain that that Octave will extend that till June of 2021, at least. And then these are the tests that you're currently using and that you'll keep using for the next 2 years: Life and Work Reading, the 80 series, Beginning Literacy 2728, excuse me, and the Reading for Language Arts is a secondary level test for reading that is also approved. It's a little more academic, so excuse me, if you're not familiar with it, you can take a look on eTests and see what that's about if your program or state allows it. The listening is the 980 series, which is the current series. So in terms of what's next for goals, for both reading and math goals, we are collecting additional data. Excuse me. And listening goals is in development. It's pretty far along in development, but we are still doing research studies for the listening goals. So the tests I just showed you are the ones you'll keep using, and we'll keep you updated as to how our progress is with these other assessments. In general, the any 2 tests, if you, let's say, test reading and math and ABE, or reading and listening for ESL, it takes about 2.5 to 3 hours. Some of that depends on whether you use eTests, where there's a short locator that takes up to 15 minutes, or if you're doing paper testing, excuse me, the appraisal is longer, 30 minutes. We're going to look into the details of the pre and post testing for the new series, and then nothing has changed about post testing. Sorry, about the time intervening between pre and post testing. Here's the Reading Goals series information, basic information. So the locator is called the 104R. It's got 12 items. It's a fixed form. It's no longer a computer adaptive test. So every student gets the same 12 items, And we changed this for the goals series because we think it will work better with the high beginning, or rather the lower level students. And so that's up to 15 minutes. The appraisal, the 900R, is 28 minutes. 28 items, 30 minutes. And then there are 4 levels of reading with the familiar alternate forms at each level. Nothing has changed there, just the form numbers. And level A has 39 items, and you need to allow up to 60 minutes. And for the other levels, there are 40 items. You need to allow up to 75. Now, some students will certainly take less than that, but you need to allow that much time to be fair to all the students. The main thing about all of the new goals series, and including, of course, reading goals, is that they are aligned to the CCR standards for adult education, and they continue to be aligned to our CASAS competencies. They measure rigorous academic skills and in the context of, that is relevant to adult learners. So we have been able to maintain our contextualization in functional life skills and keep the rigor, or I would say add the rigor and academic skills that come with the CCR. If you need grade level equivalents, GLEs, we have them for both reading and math goals. And if you do use them, they are different from life and work reading. So please use the new chart, which is on our website. Looks like this. For math goals, the overview is that it's the 104M instead of R. It's only 10 items, but it still takes up to 15 minutes. The appraisal is a 900M, 20 items, 30 minutes. For math, the form design is a bit different, where we have a combined AB level, that's forms 9, 13, and 14, 40 items and 60 minutes, and the higher level, the combined CD, is 9, 17, and 18. Those are the form numbers, 38 questions, and you need to allow up to 75 minutes because of the added rigor. Again, aligned to the CCR and CASAS competencies. One aspect of the new goals series is that the formulae are provided so that the students don't need to focus on memorizing, but rather on being able to understand the content. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But if you're transitioning students, that is continuing students from life and work reading to the goals series, and these would be ABE students right now because those are the only students for whom you can use the goals series. They must take a pre-test in the new goals series starting in July or whenever you test them in the new program year. So that's because pre- and post-test results must always be in the same series. We recommend that you give the locator, the 104R and the 104M. It's included. There's no extra charge for it in eTests. And if you're doing paper, we recommend the appraisal to get them started in the correct pre-test form. Basically, the same testing procedures apply for reading and math goals. None of the mechanics have changed, but the content has changed. If you are using eTests, you will need to create new testing sessions for the new series. So if you feel capable of doing that yourself, please do. But if you'd like support, we can help you with that. If you call tech support, they'll add them to your account. Just want to mention the importance of intake screening. It's less important generally for ABE students, but if you do a very brief writing screening, you may find that they are extremely low and maybe should be placed directly into the level A reading goals or math goals forms. But especially for ESL, I like to just make the point that it's important to screen them because if they are too low in their skills to take a locator or appraisal, it's a waste of their time and yours, and it would be better, you'd be better off doing the screening and then figuring out whether you should give them the 27 or the 81. So there's more about that on our website if you'd like to go into more depth or give a call to our office to understand that better. But just want to make sure you don't just, especially if they're low level, put them right in front of a computer. All right. As far as reports and content standards, here's the situation. In terms of CASAS Content Standards reports and CASAS Competency reports, They are similar for the goals test series, so they'll be familiar, and they are available for both reading and math goals in TOPS Pro Enterprise, so you can access them now. As far as the reading goals TAM, where we have the paper versions of these, they are available now for the reading goals TAM, and we are sending those out right now. If you've already ordered the reading goals TAM, and if you order them now, you'll be getting them included in the reading goals TAM. For math goals, that is the test administration manual I'm referring to as the TAM. These reports, the formats that you can enter results into manually are available, will be available in July. So in terms of these content standards reports, they will be aligned and coded to the new CASAS Reading Standards version 2 that was just recently uploaded to the CASAS website. We did a revision in 2016 and updated that slightly. So that's the version you should refer to understand these content standards reports. The CASAS math standards have not changed, and they already were aligned, very strongly aligned to the CCRS, so we didn't feel the need to change them. But some new reports are coming. We're going to be providing new CCR standards reports in July for both reading and math goals. And just in one area, in the high set, CASAS reading goals, likelihood of passing, we have a chart that I'm going to show you an example of this later, but we have been able to collect enough data to provide results for high set and CASAS reading goals to tell you the likelihood of passing, and that chart will appear soon. But we still need help with the high set math and with the GED reading and math. So more details in a minute on that. I see a question in the chat box. Is it recommended that ABE ASA students take both reading and math? It is recommended, but depending on your state policy or your local program policy, you need to find out if it's required. In some states, they require both modalities. In others, they only require one. All right, here is what the paper test booklets of the Reading Goals series look like. They are still color-coded. Here's the appraisal in light, sort of aqua, light blue, and then the level A is still blue, green for B, brown for C, and red for D. What else is new, aside from the covers, is that the inside of these test booklets are also in color. So they really look beautiful, and they now sync, of course, with the eTests version, which is in color. This is something very important to understand and start to work with, and that is that for the new Reading Goals series, we always have to do a new cut score study. We assemble a panel of around, with this time I think we had about 12 or 14 practitioners from around the country who were experts in ABE reading and ASA reading. So they looked at the NRS descriptors for ABE and ASE, levels 1 to 6. They looked at a set of items from easy to hard, and they told us their judgments for when they felt that the cut point, where the cut point should be placed. So on the far right are the ones you're familiar with that you've been using for life and work reading, these scale score ranges. But the new ones here are different. A little bit different at beginning ABE literacy, a little higher, which is to be expected because the series is more rigorous and academic. So we were expecting it to go up. This is not a surprise. But the way they played out is a little bit, was a little bit unexpected. That NRS-2, of course, starts higher because of how beginning ABE literacy ends at 203. This one starts at 204. And you should not move your students. If they're continuing students, they may take a little longer to complete level 1, but then they will. Then you'll, if you do move students in classes for ABE, I know many of them are multi-level classes. So then what's different, quite different about NRS-2 for ABE is the amount of score points in this range. So before it was just a 10-point range, but 201 to 210, but now it's many more. It's 13 points. So it's going to take longer. to get through that. It's a wider range, but it's going to require our students to build up their basic skills with more academic rigor earlier on. So then to get into low intermediate, NRS 3, it's quite a bit higher than before, 217 compared to 211. It's an 11-point range. To get into higher intermediate, again, quite a bit higher, 228 compared to 221. Then, but of course, now instead of that being the 15-point range, that is now only 11 points, so that's hopefully good news. And then entry into adult secondary is 3 points higher than before for both the low adult secondary and the high adult secondary. So those are the new cut score ranges that will be automatically used in eTests and TE, and that you'll be needing to use in your programs for completion of a level. The content of the new reading series does still use CASAS competencies as the context, but the focus is much more on the content standards. And we still have our reading task areas, which is the format of the reading passage. Is it a form? Is it a chart or a table? Is it text? Or is it something else? Other is the fourth category. But there is a higher percentage of text passages in the new reading goals series. And depth of knowledge, DOK, is something that is incorporated in the test design. So here's an example of a sample display, an item from the new series, Level A. It's a simple item, but even in a simple item, I wanted to show you how the content standards, competencies, and task areas play out. So, but again, the content standards, the academic skill measures, these are the most important thing we're measuring now with, in this case, that would be locating detail. When does Sammy play soccer? And the competency is a measurable learning objective in a functional life skills context. Well, that hasn't changed, and in this case, it's read an activity schedule. And the task area, the format, is read a chart. So here we have a chart that summarizes the CCR content, the content standard content in the new reading goals series. And you can see flush left, there are three main categories: vocabulary, reading comprehension skills, and higher order reading skills. And within each of these, some of them have subcategories. Vocabulary, you can see it relates to the CCR reading anchor called R4. In some of the levels, and I'm going to show you in a second, we have subcategories. And then the other two categories are distinguished by the depth of knowledge. So I'm going to go ahead just to show you, if you're not familiar with depth of knowledge, there are 4 levels in this framework that's used in K-12 and it's used in adult ed. And level 1 of depth of knowledge, or DOK, is recalling information. It doesn't require much cognitive processing. And then the other levels become more challenging in terms of the higher order thinking skills that they require. We are not able to test at DOK4 in a multiple choice test, and still keep it short enough. So if you've got that in mind now, I'm going to go back. And so the reading comprehension skills category is characterized by having all of its items as DOK1. So that could be locate detail, which corresponds to CCR reading anchor R1, or they could be simple main idea questions, or what is the author's purpose, R2 and R6. In the DOK2 and 3 for higher order reading skills, there's the more challenging aspects of R1, inferring, drawing conclusions, comparing, text structure and features, R5, author's point of view, R6, the higher levels of the CCR, and then R8, which is quite challenging. So there are a few that we don't measure, R7. We actually do measure R9, and I think we're maybe going to amend this slightly to include R9. We realize that we should include it in our grid here. And then R10 is the text complexity, which relates to all of the test questions. All right. As far as the vocabulary, which is something new in the goal series, in Life and Work Reading in our previous series, we never measured vocabulary per se, but we do have about 20 to 25% of the items in the Reading Goal series that are very focused. We drew from something called the academic word list that was a result of a research study and contains 570 word families that were most frequently occurring in the academic texts that were studied. So that limits the universe that we selected from somewhat, and that's a very useful tool if you're not familiar with it. We also consulted the general service list, which is very commonly used as well. So I recommend that you take a look at this if you're not familiar with it. So in terms of how we changed the item types in the series because of the new content demands and rigor, we added, I'll show you in a minute, this kind of sentence completion format. We have some other new text and item features. At level A, we have photo prompts, and we also increased the use of item families, or the number of questions that relate to one reading passage. You could say a set of test items. And so now, especially in level C and D, we have almost always at least 3 and as many as 5 questions that relate to a passage. We tried to keep the passages short also, and so that's how we were able to be more efficient about the test timing. So here's an example of a high level, level D test item, and you can see that it's not long, but that the text is complex, and the there are numbered lines. But in this question, you can see it's a very challenging question. The writer distinguishes between leasing and buying by emphasizing what. So it's not what is the art. It's about how the writer creates their argument. And still, it's in a very relevant, interesting context, we hope, for adult learners. So, but yet it's higher level and more academic in terms of what it's measuring. All right, now let's go to the next. This is another example, which asks which statement would make the best conclusion. So again here, you can see that the options are a little more challenging, and they have to really use some higher order thinking skills to answer that question. Here's a level C question, employment context, short. And this is illustrating how we are testing vocabulary, where the targeted word is underlined and is also underlined in the question. And then we have these academic vocabulary options. All right, now something new. We have just recently posted the CASAS eTests sampler. And these are sample test items that are in the format of eTests. We have the new HTML interface, which also comes with a new format. And it's very exciting when you go on the website, which I'm going to do right now, you can see how to get to this and see the questions. I'm going to go out of the PowerPoint and go on to the website and take you to the home page just so you can see the navigation here. Hopefully you're still seeing that. Let me make sure you are. Make sure. Can somebody just, okay, great, thank you. All right, so here we are. If you look upper left under the CASAS logo, if you go to product overviews, I'm actually going to, and then if you just look down the left-hand side where you go to assessments, clicking on that, I want to point out before we go to the sample items that there's a page for reading goals here on the left. And in this page, on this page, there is a webinar recording similar to today's. There are there's the test blueprint that we're going to look at right now, and also FAQs, the grade level equivalents, and a link to sample test items here, as well as a chart that documents the forms, the timings, and all. So if we go to the test blueprint, I'm going to show you this. We'll get to the items in a minute, but I want to show you the overview of the content. So at level A, we have just the DOK1 category for reading comprehension skills. And if you see here for the vocabulary, it's all for high frequency. The level A is similar really to life and work reading in terms of the content. And the reading comprehension skills is the rest of the test, which is mostly locate details. Then level B, you can see there's a little bit of higher order reading skills, 20% of the test. The vocabulary is a mix of high frequency, but beginning to see the academic vocabulary and meaning from context. Then at level B, it shows you what kind of higher order reading is required. Level C, you can see the change, where we get quite a bit more of the higher order reading skills, equal proportion to the reading comprehension skills. And here, for vocabulary, there's no more of the high frequency. It's all academic vocabulary and meaning from context, R4, C, and D. Here are the descriptors for the CCR. Then reading comprehension skills, we see more main idea and author's purpose than before. And at the higher order skills, which is 40% of the test, we can see these different content areas being tested. Now, level D, it's a dramatic jump in the higher order reading skills, up to 55% of the test. So that's where it really is different from our life and work reading, and these are really quite demanding, these questions at the high level. You can see the inference and the other categories, including analyzing claim, which is 20% of that category. All right, so that's an overview of the content. Now, if we go back to the reading goals page, we can go, if we scroll down, we can see the sample test items. So I'm going to click on that, and this takes us to the page where, if you see on the top left is the CASAS eTests sampler. But before we go there, I want to show you these are the sample items, but in the paper format. So we're going to look at the level A just briefly so you can get an idea. And scroll down, pardon my scrolling, but you can see there are practice items. And these are the photo items, very simple, really vocabulary questions based on photos at the beginning of the level A reading goals. But then familiar types of displays about community signs, advertisements with very simple DOK1 type information recall questions. Recipe, we have some emails, so we tried to use some 21st century electronic formats and some passages, some text passages like before. I'm going to let you take a look at level B yourself. I'm going to then let's look at level C real quick. So you can see some of these formats here. So you saw that already, but the important thing here, we have a internet catering service format, so here's an inference question: which statement would the Quick Chef company most likely agree with? So you'll see most likely to key an inference question. The literal word for word response or answer is not in the text. Here we have a passage, employment passage about problem solving that employers are looking for with numbered paragraphs, and an underlined word that is the first question in paragraph 3, etc. So you can see that these are some higher order thinking skills kinds of questions. There's still some finding information, but more challenging. Here's about mystery shopping. And I'm going to skip, here's all the forms at level C and D have two of these types of reading passages where there are two different points of view, two different authors. It could be letter to the editor or pro and con. And so that enables us to ask questions about what each writer says on the topic and sometimes to compare them. All right, and here's a longer, not very long, but a longer email, work-related, and of course you get the answers at the end. So now if we go back to this sample test item page, I'm going to show you the sampler, and we're not going to spend much time there, but I just want to show you. So if you see on the left, first item there is CASAS eTest sampler. When I click on it, it opens up with this display where the pink ones are reading. You can still get life and work reading because you're still using that for ESL. Here are the reading goals at 4 levels. The same items that are we just saw on level A will be here, but in the eTest format. Math goals, we have a small set. We're about to put up some more at each level. Life skills math is going out of circulation very soon, and we have the listening ones here. All right, so let's look at level D, which we didn't see before. Here's the opening page that gives the initial instructions. If we click the arrow, we'll see the display. You know, I should be using, I'm sorry for this, I should be using Chrome because I had this problem before, so that's a recommendation which I should follow myself to use Chrome, but that's why we're not seeing this screen loading on the left. But you can see that we have the plus and minus arrows in eTest now. Let's just go ahead. Okay, we have 2 practice items, and I'm gonna answer to this. Okay. All right, then we can practice more if we want to, but then we can begin the test. And here that's the same practice item we saw before. And again, we can make that larger if we want to, and scroll if we need to. Now, I want to show you these features of the goals. So now as I mentioned, we have we have more items that relate to one passage. So here there are 4 questions that relate to beliefs versus by. There are 17 questions in this sample set of level B, and we're on question 1. So now if we go on to question 2, we're going to see that we're now at 2 of 4 in this set of items, and we're in 2 of 17, and so on. So if we go, and so now we're at 3 of 4 in question 3. You can still, if you want, see the time remaining if it's an option in the toolbar, which you can enable or disable if you wish. So let's get just maybe through this 3 of 4, and then we'll skip this one. If we skip it, we'll be able to go to the review panel at the end and be able to try it later. I'm not going to go through the whole sample items, but here you can see now we're in the next set of questions. It's 1 of 5, and now we're in 5 of 17. So that gives you an idea of the new eTest samplers. All right, I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint. All right. Now, I'm going to talk now about, for reading still, a little bit about the new CASAS reading standards. They were quite a bit revised and reorganized compared to the 2009 ones that were used with life and work reading. And as I mentioned, we have a second edition that's now on the website. So they're very much aligned to the CCR standards. They do have some additional standards that are not in the CCR standards that we still thought were important. So they're there, and we have them now with dots for ABE, ASE, as well as ESL that indicate the level of the standard. When we go back to the website, I will show them to you. So, but if hopefully you'll recognize that the categories that are aligned with the test content that I showed you earlier. So, Category 1, RDG 1, is phonics or foundational literacy, but RDG 2 is the vocabulary, 3 is the reading comprehension skills, that DOK 1 category. RDG 4 is the higher order reading skills. So these 2, 3, and 4 are the same as the chart that I showed you earlier, and RDG 5 is a higher order reading, just for literary text if you happen to use it. And this is what the format looks like, which is a little different from before, where we used RDG because the CCR uses R. And so the RDG 2.7 is, here's the standard, and here are the CCR standards that it aligns to. So this one is aligned to R4 and level CDE of the CCR. And in terms of the NRS levels, ABE and ESL, you can see how they relate to each other, actually is interesting. And the CASAS level, so here are the dots that show the levels that this standard relates to. So it's not, you wouldn't use it at the very beginning levels, but the next one you could possibly use at the beginning levels. So this is how, this is the new format for the reading standards. This is what that Anchor 4, R4 looks like at levels A, B, C, D, and E. And that's what, that's what these CDE letters refer to, is these areas in the CCR standard, the level-specific standard. All right, I'm going to move on. Let's see if there's anything in the chat box. In California, you only are required to do one, reading or math for ABE. All right, let's carry on then to math goals. So this is the appraisal and the yellow colored, and then the combined AB is green and the combined CD is red. Again, these are also in color inside and out. Here's the design where the AB forms cover NRS, ABE, and ASE levels 1 to 4, ABE 1 to 4, and the CD forms cover NRS levels 4 through 6. So in the AB, you can enter and complete 1 to 3, you can get placed into 4, and in the CD, you can enter and complete 4 and 5 and get placed into 6. And then the exit from 6 is an HSE completion. So now here are the new score ranges for math, and there are a couple of very interesting things here that hopefully you can see clearly comparing the two charts, where on the left we have the life skills score ranges and the corresponding ABE, ASE levels. And here where you see a gap is because in the new ABE, ASE, NRS leveling, we have an additional level inserted called middle intermediate. So, and because it's only possible to have 6 ABE, ASE levels altogether, what happened is that the adult secondary was collapsed into 1. So, and again, just like for reading, we did a cut score study. And it's interesting that now for the math goals, we have a range that starts lower than before, which I think is going to be useful in the field because our math scores, our students generally do have more difficulty with math. So these score ranges that go lower than before, I think will help to have more opportunities for completions at the lower levels. So you can see by the time they get to NRS 3, they enter lower than previously, which was 211, and up to 214. The middle intermediate takes care of, takes you up to, starts at 215 and takes you up into what used to be level 4. So high intermediate begins a little higher than than before, 226 up to 235, and then adult secondary begins at 236 and above. And we don't have any ending point there as before. So we do have the GLEs, the grade level equivalents for reading goals, math goals, which are different from before, so please use this chart from now on with the math goals. Any questions? Let's see, hopefully that'll make sense to you when you study it a little bit more at your leisure. So like reading goals, we have still competencies that provide the context, but with the focuses on the content standards. This is how our CASAS math standards content areas relate to the CCR, where there's mostly a good alignment, but we have two domain areas compared to their one here. Now this is a chart showing how these content domains play out at the two levels. So not surprisingly, the number sense, we have a higher percentage of items at the lower level, and for algebra, it's a higher percentage at the higher level. Then in the other areas, the percentages of items are comparable. Before we go to the website, I'm going to show you that colorful chart in a minute of the content. But here, this is where something that's quite different about the math goals compared to life skills math, in that the calculator is not only nice, but necessary. It's required, and if you're on eTests, the icon that's at the top right, it's there all the time, and it can be accessed if a student needs it. It's not needed for all the items, but whenever a student wants to, they can open it up, and it opens out looking like this. It's a basic calculator. If you're doing paper, you're going to be you must provide a calculator. And here are some of the guidelines for that. So we've had a lot of questions. The text on this slide is taken straight from our updated math goals FAQs on the website, which I can go through now, but if you want to see it, it's there. So the calculators are not, they're basic calculators. It's not a graphing calculator, which is very complex. Of course, they cannot use the calculator on their cell phone because you would have collected their cell phones. You must provide them with the calculator. They cannot use their own. You should use the same calculator for all the students. And here are some examples of the calculators that you can use, and they include the ones that are used or required for the different HSE, high school equivalency exams. So if you're already using certain calculators for these, you can also use them for the math goals test. So the focus of the content in the math goals is being aligned to the CCR is a deeper understanding of math foundations, concepts, procedures. It's a conceptual understanding that's the focus, seeing the big picture rather than knowing only how to solve a problem, but knowing what answers mean and applying concepts is to solve the problem. So that is a shift. There's some different kinds of item types, but we still have situational scenarios, word problems, calculations, and traditional context. So now I'm going to go out to the website. And I'm going to go, here we can go to, see on the left, I'm going to go to the math goals page. So you can see we also have FAQs are here, the sample items, the grade level equivalents. Now I'm going to open up the test blueprint, which was just posted about 2-3 weeks ago. And it's similar in format to the reading one. But so for the level A, B, maybe combined, here's the overview of the different categories and how they play out in terms of percentages on the test. And here, if we look below, we can see for the first category, operations and the number system, we have two subcategories, base 10, 60% of that 33%, and fractions and ratios, which is 40%. And you can see the CCR correlations here. They do come into different categories in the CCR, and so we tried to simplify that with our CASAS categories by combining them to make it a little bit easier to interpret the test results. And then the other, algebra and geometry, there are no subcategories. Measurement and data, we broke it into two, measurement and then data analysis or representation. And for the CD, here's the overview of the content. And in this case, we just have a combined operations in the number system because there are fewer items in that category at the CD level. Algebra, in fact, at the CD level, there are no subcategories, but because there's a kind of a more even, if you see, distribution of the items across the form, across the test. All right, so you can look at that more at your leisure. And here's the math goals page again. So we can, there is a link to the, actually the sample items in the paper format are up here. And a chart showing the basic layout of the test with the number of items and how long is there. But now, if we want to go to sample test items, you can. There's a lot of ways you can get to it. So if you see on the left, sample test item link, and I'm going to go there, and we're going to click again on the eTest sampler, and so you can see a few math items. I don't want to. I'm just going to do a few, but just so you can, hopefully, I can get quickly through the practice. But that's a very simple question. And this is not, we're going to be putting up the ones that have the practice and everything else. This is just a set of 10 items. So here, go to the next item. This is a more challenging one. But what I want to show you is that the answer is not a numerical solution to the question, to the problem. The question is, which formula is how to solve this problem? So it's an equation, all right, and so that's something that's more emphasized, as I said, on the conceptual rather than just the problem solving. Here's a simple question. So if I wanted to use the calculator for this, this is the AB level, but it would pop up, and there it is. So you can use a calculator. By the way, if you want to provide physical calculators to students on eTests, that's okay. But just make sure you give them all the same one, and you give it to all of them as an option. All right. Here we have an example of a higher level math question in algebra, and you can see that the definitions are provided at the bottom of the paragraph. We can make at the display, we can make it bigger if we need to. And here again, the answer is which equation. Then here's a simple parallel lines question, a harder one about angles. Just going to flip through it quickly. Very simple, even that definition, if you're not familiar, you might need that. Here's a harder geometry question. Then we have a simple chart representation of data here. And this last one is a probability question, which is very challenging. And let's say I'm going to skip that because it looks very hard and I don't know if I have time. But if I do have time, just want to show you, if you're not familiar, at the end of the test, there's a review grid. So if I want to go back to these that I skipped before, it takes me right back. And now that I still have some time, I can try to answer that and then go back again to the review pane, and so on. All right. So, yes, by the way, I want to show you the content standards. So I'm navigating to that. So here you can see this is on the CASAS Basic Skills Content Standards page, CASAS Reading Standards 2016 second edition, which you can download. And then there's a really great introduction to this, which explains a lot about the new version and about how it's formatted, et cetera. So I do recommend that you take a look at that. And then it gets into the actual standards. All right, so that's what that is. All right, I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint. Is the formula sheet still available? I don't know the answer to that question. I don't think so, because I think everything that is required is provided on the screen or in the test booklet. But I can double check on that and get back to you. If you leave your email and contact information, we'll get back to you about that question. All right, I want to get a little bit into reports. We have about a little less than 10 minutes. So for the skill reports, content standards, we have the individual student one and the class one, which is called a summary. But something that's new for goals is that we're only relating one content standard to each test item. In the previous series, we did multiple coding of the questions, test questions, and it, I think, got a little bit dizzying. So we decided it would be better all around to just choose the most important content standard that a particular item relates to, and that's what we have coded it to. And this, we think, will make the reports easier to interpret and use. So if you're in TE, here is the pathway, reports, test results, content standards, and then here are these two reports. This is only available in the enhanced COPS Pro Enterprise version, not the basic. So I'll get to that question in a minute. I just want to take a quick scroll through these reports. So here's an example of a student level report. So you can see that it's level C reading goals. It's RDG 2. These are the only reading standards that are in the test. And so, for example, in this one, RGD 2.3, there are 4 items, and half of them the student got right. So generally, you see, except for this question, that there are more more items for each content standard than before, where many of them were only, for each content standard, there was only 1 item, and you really can't judge much from that. Here's a class version of that, where you can see the percentages. Now, for the competency reports, there's, as before, student and class level. But again, we only are using 1 competency for each set of test questions. So again, it makes it easier to understand. The results are more meaningful because there's more items for the same competency. And I'm going to show you a report that's always been in TE, but I think it's been very little used. So here's the pathway in TE: reports, test results, competency performance, and then you get there. And then, as I mentioned, this PowerPoint is going to be posted, so you'll be able to see it. And so here, in the beginning of the level C and 906R, the first 4 questions are all about interpret information about employee benefits. So they all are coded to that competency. And we've listed it out 4 times because if you resort this report, right now it's sorted in terms of the item position, but if you were to sort on whether they got it right or wrong, or on the task area, then you would still want to see this here. But basically, you'll see that the next set starts from item 5 to 9. It's the same competency area. So that's how the reading goals is simplified in that way. And here's the class version of that with the percentages. But now here's this report that has been in TE, and you can access it. It's called Student Performance, or it could be Class Performance by Competency Area. Sorry, Competency Category. And what this does is it shows you just a 2-digit, the 1.7 instead of, let's say, 1.73. I'm not, what was it? Let's see. It was 1.73. See here on items 14 and 15, 14 to 17, but here it's collapsed into 1.7. You just see it's the same information really now, but it's a much neater presentation. And one thing we're going to do is to, someone pointed out at Summer Institute that the task area is not showing here. So we're going to find a way to add that to this report in some way, and maybe in a separate chart below that you would also print out or appear. So, but this is something I wanted to share with you as a perhaps clearer, cleaner way to look at the competency results for your students. And here's the class version of that. Now, in the individual skills profile, there's still, of course, the individual student report, but the summary, which is the class version of this, there are some changes just because it's a new series, because test results, skills profile, and there's the individual, and then the summary means class. So here is actually the old one, that is a 35M and the 187R, but I'm showing it to you because it has this likelihood of passing in the bottom left. And it has the old content reading standards and math standards. But now in the new one, this is a reading test. Well, actually, the individual skills profile would have, it doesn't have math, but I guess if the student, let's say the class only took reading, but you can see it has the new reading standards. And this is actually going to change very soon. In July, we plan to add the CCR report information here. So instead of this, you're going to see the chart. The framework is the chart that I showed you early on that will have the 3 categories and subcategories as well. So look forward to seeing that in July. But you see it doesn't have the likelihood of passing because we haven't put that in yet. So I would like to encourage you here to help us. If you see, I'm going to skip right to this part, right? Oops, I can't get that here and highlight it. But the HiSET CASAS study, which is basically that likelihood of passing the HiSET, we have completed information for the reading goals compared to HiSET, and that will appear starting in July. But we still need help to get more student responses, a bigger N, for the math goals compared to HiSET. And we need, for the GED, compared to reading and math goals, we need more data from level C and D students. So if you can help us with that, you can contact fieldtesting@casas.org and participate. If your students are using the goals test and just about to take the HiSET math or the GED reading or math, whether they pass or not, it's helpful to have, very helpful, whether they pass or not, to get that information so that as soon as we have enough data, we'll be able to provide those charts for both GED and completely for HiSET. We need, as I mentioned earlier, some help with more data for math goals. We need help with reading goals for ESL and listening goals. So please reach out to us if you can. Otherwise, you may be hearing from us to help with these studies. So here's our contact information. There was a question. We have only 2 forms, 917 and 18 for level CD for math. If a student score is very high in one of the test forms, as we used to have the score plus asterisk, in the old CASAS test, we don't have any other higher test. Well, it wouldn't be the asterisk form. If they score high in the test, it would be a diamond score. So let's say they take the 917 and they score in the diamond range. You can use that score even at the pre-test time because there's no higher form to give them. And then when you post-test, you would give the 918. Then if they're still with you and you need to once again post-test, you would go back to the 917. So that's how that would work. Are there any other questions? We're just at the top of the hour. So again, you can be looking forward to some more forms coming out in July in TOPS Pro Enterprise and also in the TAMs. Please help us with these studies. It will be very much appreciated, especially for these ISET and GED studies that we're working on, especially in the next couple months. All right, well, thank you everyone for participating. I know you're busy, and tune in next month. We'll be posting the dates for the next few months very shortly. And if you have questions, please let us know. Thank you.